collection of Hamlets. How fortunate we are. We didn't come up with a good collective noun for Hamlets.
A horror of Hamlets.
A horror of Hamlets.
An isolation.
Here we are in Southwark Cathedral, where Edmund Shakespeare, Shakespeare's brother, was buried. There is also, do you know, there's a stained glass window in honour of Shakespeare downstairs, which has Hamlet in the middle of it. So.
Edmund was an actor, wasn't he?
He was, yeah, yeah.
Two actors in the same family.
He never played Hamlet, unlike all of you. Was Hamlet on your list? Did you have ambitions to play Hamlet, and where did the sort of what happened the moment when you realised that it was on your horizon?
I didn't have it on my list, nor did I necessarily see myself as someone who was going to be asked to play Hamlet, nor necessarily wanted to. And it came about because I had done a production of Man of Mode, playing a very silly foppling flutter in at the National. And Nick, whilst we were doing that, called me, Nick Heitner, who ended up directing the Hamlet that I did, called me to his office, and I did think it was going to be a dressing down, but it actually was I've got this idea that I'd like to do Hamlet with you, and I'd like, in a few years later, to do Othello with you as Iago and Adrian as Othello. And let me know how you feel about that. And I remember leaving that office just thinking, oh, the sort of how I've perceived myself, and also how I think others might now perceive myself, has now just sort of shifted in that last 15 minutes. And it was sort of 2 years ahead of when we were going to play it, so I sort of had enough time, and he sort of said, why don't you try and do something else in between? So we did the Revenger's Tragedy as a sort of gear up for it. But yeah, I do remember that meeting in the office just being like, oh right, my sort of career's changed.
I was surprised. Hadn't been on a list and didn't think it would come my way. And then I was at the RSC, and Matthew Orchus got in touch and put it to me. And we talked about what he wanted to do with it, and I got that because I would never have, believed myself as a tights and blouse Hamlet, with doublet obviously over the tights. And so I knew it was going to be kind of modern dress and was going to concentrate on the families, which is what that production did. So I was sort of encouraged and inspired that I could have a go at it, but it was a total surprise. And just squeezed it in before I was 40.
I thought I was born to play Hamlet. Can you imagine? That was my answer. No, for obvious reasons, never thought I'd play Hamlet. We did Henry V maybe a couple of years before. So conversations were starting about gender conscious, gender fluidity, but it wasn't really part of the conversation in the way it is now. I'd got the artistic directorship job at the Globe, and I knew that quite quickly, straight out of the gate, I was going to have to sort of lay out my stall about what it meant to have an actor manager in that role. So deliberately set up an ensemble to do Hamlet and As You Like It, and played Hamlet in Hamlet, and then William and Adam in As You Like It, just to go, this is what it is to have an actor manager at the Globe. Because I definitely know if I'd started without acting, I would have sat behind a desk, and that would quite quickly have become my role. So yeah, it came, lots of things around it led to going, what's the best way to sort of go, this is how things are going to carry on.
I didn't think I'd get a chance to play Hamlet either, to be honest. The first person over on this side of the world that mentioned it to me was Peter Brook, actually, after I did Prisoner with him. He said, you must look at Hamlet. We can look at one monologue. And I was like, okay, we can do it. We never got a chance to do it, though. And unfortunately, but then, yeah, then you surprised me. Rob just texted me and said, do you want to meet for a coffee? We met outside the understudy, and he said, would you like to do Hamlet? Yeah, it was amazing. So, thank you.
Yeah. It wasn't the office in the National, but it's similar.
Yeah.
I think actors who thought of themselves as being classical actors and who would have a career as an actor inevitably would play Hamlet. So I wasn't looking forward to it, and I didn't much enjoy it. But when it I was asked to do it, I thought, oh, I see, yes, right. And I was lucky, I played it when I was 29. I think that's almost, how old are you? Never mind.
39.
No, 39?
Yeah.
You're not.
Yeah, no.
Well, congratulations, that's very
Fountain somewhere.
Well, you seem to be very young on stage, which is good. But 29 is a good age because you can still relate to being a teenager, which perhaps he is at the beginning of the play, and you can also relate to the slightly more mature Hamlet who is ready for everything at the end of the play.
Mm.
But then I played it again very unexpectedly when I was 81 years old on film, and that was interesting, and I could tell you why.
Where did that idea come from, though? Was that
Well, from a director I've worked with a lot, Sean Mathias, and who has had a season at the Windsor, Theatre Royal Windsor, and had the idea that perhaps I could contribute something as an old Hamlet. And actually, I was absolutely ready to do it, in that the previous Shakespeare I'd done was King Lear for the second time. And Jonathan Mumby, the director, said to me one day, I just want to note, Ian, try and surprise yourself. He was talking in rehearsal. I think perhaps he meant that I'd got it all planned out, and rather ploddingly was landing on each point and making it for the audience. Do you understand where we are now in the play? Because I'm giving you my interpretation. Just surprise yourself. And I took that as a cue and forgot all intention in rehearsing King Lear of working it out. Is he really mad? Is he, what is his disease? Was there a Mrs. Lear? No, I didn't think about any of those things. I just said the lines with as much intention as they seemed to require, passion and so on, but didn't try and link one bit of the play to the other, one scene with another. And of course, left it up to the audience to do that. I just presented the evidence, which was the words. So when I came to do Hamlet, I took the same approach as an old man. I didn't try and be young. I didn't try and give my interpretation of Hamlet. I just said the words, hopefully trippingly upon the tongue. And then the most illuminating things occurred, the one of which I suggested to you before you started rehearsing. Your Hamlet. To be or not to be? That's the question. And he answers it right at the end of the play when he says, let be. Mm. Now, could I have worked that out and thought that that was a connection that was essential to his development? Perhaps I could, but it was just that I was thinking about the words and not what was behind the words, not some psychological link that made it some sort of sense.
I've forgotten my question. I was just listening to
when did Hamlet appear on your horizon?
Oh, yeah, and I didn't think I was going to play Hamlet. I wasn't thinking, when is my Hamlet, I'm preparing for it or anything like that. It was a surprise because I'd done As You Like It, an all-male and As You Like It for Cheek by Jowl. We'd gone to the Booth de Nord with the production. Peter had said, we should do something together, and what do you think about a Shakespeare? And it's Peter Brook. I went, yeah. And he wasn't being specific. And then it was a kind of, a very sort of different way of casting. There was myself and another actor who were being, or if you like, auditioned and workshopped at the same time. And he was sort of humming and hawing. And in the end, he said, well, I'd like you to do it. So I jumped in and did it, and didn't see myself as a Hamlet, didn't have a particular interpretation.
How old were you when you did it?
I was 30 when I did it. And I think what Sir Ian just said about playing...
Who?
Ian, sorry. What Ian just said about playing each point, each line, each scene, I discovered that. I feel like doing Hamlet made me a better actor. And the idea of playing each scene to the hilt for that scene's sake and not trying to in some way make a conscious effort to tie it into anything else, but playing it to the hilt, each moment, each scene, and then let the audience make up character as they see
exactly what
it. That has never left me, and it's a great lesson to learn. You let them decide what your character is. You just play everything as fully as possible.
These bells really make it feel like it's the start of Hamlet. Can you imagine these bells playing over the watch?
Yeah. For continuity, they now have to continue through the whole conversation. So let's get used to it.
Feels like they might.
I've just realised that I've played Hamlet 3 times.
There we go. A forgotten Hamlet.
Peter Sharfish, the great dancer, who had a company up in Edinburgh, asked me to come and be in their ballet of Hamlet. And there was a young man dancing Hamlet, but there was I wandering around with him. As he danced, I would speak one of the soliloquies, I think. And occasionally do a little turn.
Well, maybe that's a good spur to talk about the physical demands of playing the part. What are your memories of the demands on you and how it felt to come off stage at the end of each performance?
I sort of feel like we should go because I can't believe.
Knackered, yeah.
Yeah, because you're doing it. You did it twice yesterday.
Yeah.
You're going on again tonight. I have really vivid memories of where I was at the time. Like, are you all right?
It's that question. I was going through a bit of a tough time learning the lines and getting into the sort of the mindset of it. And I was being very melodramatic, according to my friends, in real life. And I realized, I'm getting my life to the same level as the drama of the play. I made a mess of some things, unfortunately. And so I asked Rob if I could speak to some previous Hamlets, and Rob kindly put me in touch with Rory. And Rory, we had a call, and he said, I said, did you go a bit mad when you when you started this? And he said, the most maddening thing was everybody asking me if I was all right.
Sorry.
No.
It was interesting. No, it was more like in the run up to playing it, when you tell someone, they go, ooh, almost as if you've taken on an intolerable burden. It's like, well, I'm an actor. It's kind of like, it's meant to be fun. I mean, it's kind of a great part in a great play. Yeah. It might be fun to actually do it. But people did see it, particularly I think maybe doing it at the National, people were like, ooh, that's a big one. Like, that's a burden. So I was sort of trying to definitely tell you to park that to one side, because it will be done again. It has been done before. This is your moment, and to seize it.
Yeah. So helpful, man. Thank you so much. But yeah, it's knackering, but it's Hamlet at the National. Oh gosh, like every time, however tired I am, I can't wait to do it.
You can't wait.
Yeah, I can't. Come on.
And if you ever got thought it was a bit tedious, just nip out into the auditorium, and the excitement of the audience going in to see Hamlet at the Littleton Theatre is...
I remember...
They're all on your side.
I remember that the very first preview of doing it, which is the only time that, I mean, you can rehearse as much as you like, but it's when you get an audience that you realise, okay, we're now fully cast. Because sharing those soliloquies with the white brick wall in rehearsal room 1 or whatever it is, it's obviously you don't get much back like you do from 1,100 people in the Olivier, and finally being able to unpack your heart with words to these people who change every night, but finally you've actually got a relationship that you can be open with, because it's such an isolating and lonely part to play, because you're constantly putting barriers up between yourself and the people that you've had your friendships, your closest relationships with, you're constantly pushing people away. And then finally in your first preview, you actually get to speak to people that you trust. And of course, they're complete strangers to you and they change every night, but that's who you are going to have your closest relationship with. As a result, it's such an emotional rush, that first preview I found, that I remember it got to Act 4 and thinking, I can't go on. And then realizing, oh, it's okay, I've got 25 minutes now. And that knowledge of Shakespeare as an actor, to know I can push it this far, but I'm going to have to give him a break at some point. Because I remember during the Murder on Gonzago play, I was following Claudius with a follow spot, and then when he sort of reacted to the poisoning in the ear, I sort of would let go of it, and I hadn't realised that the follow spot actually did that if you let go of it. I was underneath it, and it smacked me right on my baldyheed, which I still have a scar on now. That's my Hamlet scar. But that was the first preview, and it was just such a tumour. I don't know if you remember that feeling, that first preview. And I just remember being like, I've got to have a break. I'm so tired. And then getting that 25 minutes and thinking like, I can do the fight now. I can do the fight. It's okay. I've got enough energy now. But that awareness that as a writer, he was also a really practical dramatist and sympathetic to the needs of his actors.
Except you then do have to have the fight.
Yeah, but because you knew that was on the horizon, it was almost more kind of like, even more tired knowing what I've got to do. So being able to just breathe and lie down for 20 minutes.
And you've done a lot of work on the way to England that the audience don't see, that you don't actually have to act out. And you come back having sort of moved on quite a long way.
We cut that in my version of Brooks' version of Hamlet. It was 2.5 hours straight through, no interval, and we didn't do the England bit. I mean, it was spoken about, but I went off, changed my top,
and came back on.
Came back on. And the scene changed, and we just.
Tell me it was a gunfight. To make it
he
easy.
distilled the sword fighting down into a very sort of distilled version of a fight, but it was.
What did you wear when you came back from England?
I just had the same. I was just in black with black.
What did you wear on your head? Anything?
No, nothing. I had dreads then.
Did you wear anything? Can you remember?
I think I had another hoodie. I have had about 3 hoodies during that.
A hoodie?
I think it was like he had disguised himself by getting something.
I had a little woolen hat.
I had a woolen hat.
Yes, but I was the first person to wear a woolen hat.
I won that.
And what do you wear?
The same
A
thing.
little woolen hat.
A legacy.
That's my contribution.
Did John Gielgud didn't wear a little woolen hat?
Certainly not. No.
He had a policeman's helmet.
I'm really interested in what you say about not sort of trying to connect each moment, one moment to another, but just discovering each one afresh. We certainly we rehearsed, I think, as much by accident as design. We actually rehearsed quite a lot out of order.
Yes.
But the effect of that was by necessity. We had to treat each moment on its own terms and explore that, and then retrospectively figure out how that worked.
When I did it back in 1971, I was desperately trying to make sense of the story and make Hamlet's journey one that the audience would understand in the way that I understood it. I was running alongside the character. Not good at all. But one of the things that we were talking about what happened during rehearsal, Robert Chetrin, an ex-actor who I'd worked with before in repertory companies, we were talking about what the ghost would be.
And he was the director, wasn't he?
Robert Chetrin, yeah. And the designer was Michael Annals, the great designer of the time, who gave us a set of mirrors. And the ghost, when it appeared, was reflected in all these mirrors, so there were about 10 ghosts. It was just a huge hallucination. And Bob said, I think probably you're high on drugs, Hamlet. Oh, I said, what drugs? He said, well, I don't know, a joint of some sort, hashish. Oh, I said, I've never had that. So that's when I had my first joint, rehearsing Hamlet, and I've never regretted that.
Never looked back.
Introduction. What?
Never looked back since.
Never looked back. And have discovered that to have a joint whilst looking at the text in the evening after rehearsal, ideas spring to mind which I don't think otherwise would.
Love this. Noted.
Anyone else have rehearsal memories?
I remember doing the speeches for a week on my own. So I started the rehearsals a week before the company did. And so Peter and I would just sit, and fond of carpet is Peter, and we'd sit on carpet and cushions and just very quietly, he was this close to me, and we'd very quietly go through every beat of the...
Had he directed it before?
He'd done Lom Key, The Man Who's There, and so on. He'd done projects based on Hamlet and aspects of Hamlet, but he'd never done the entire play. And so we both sat in our fear with the text, various texts, and went through it. And we moved To Be or Not to Be speech, which I'm sure you're coming to later on, but we moved that because in doing the speeches on their own, I said, in Hamlet's changing state of mind, it felt like To Be or Not to Be was in the wrong place, and so we moved it. After killing Polonius, Hamlet encounters Ophelia silently. She doesn't want to go near him, and when she gets off stage, he sits down, having got it wrong, and does To Be or Not to Be. And then the play continues and gets sent to England. Yeah, so that's I remember that. And then we had 10 weeks of rehearsal with the company.
Oh wow, 10 weeks.
10
Oh,
weeks.
that's cool.
In Paris, you rehearsed?
In Paris, yeah. And I remember him throwing out things to this day that I think, that was an amazing idea. But he would go, no, that's film, and get rid of it. That's opera, and get rid of it. And one idea I remember very clearly is that Ophelia she's a Shantala Shivalingappa, a dancer, and she wore a red silk material, and he had the silk layered like this, like sari material as you sell it, had it layered, and Laertes carried this and laid it in the grave. And she was there, she was present, so as they were talking about her, she would be looking at them and walking around, and she took the end of this sari material and walked off stage very slowly. And so for the rest of the scene, this red silk sari was just unraveling from the grave right the way up stage left, into the stage left corner. And at the very end, the end of it just snaked off and disappeared with her. And we were still looking at the grave. And I thought that was beautiful. And Peter cut it.
Why?
He went, no. And he took it out. Just incredible ideas. But yeah, because we had the luxury of time.
Did you jump in the grave?
Yes, I did.
I jumped in the grave, yeah.
Did you?
I jumped in the grave.
Can you remember?
I think so, yeah. I mean, it's sort of, you've got to hold her, haven't you? That's what he says. You know.
And there was one show we did, and the grave wouldn't close. So we had to improvise
with the fight around the-
Yeah, the grave was
through the
then
grave.
open for the rest of the show, so we had to kind of improvise the sword fight around the open grave.
I remember
that.
Rehearsals, were, speaking of this fight, I think Nick had got some good advice that get the fight choreographed before you start rehearsals, and I think I've passed that on to you.
We took that advice, yeah.
And so we had 2 weeks, maybe a week or 2 weeks, just me and the Laertes, Alex. It led to production very nearly not happening because almost sort of day 3, we were just about to go for another rehearsal, and Alex had both of the swords, and I think I said whatever I said, but he chucked it before I was ready, and what the chances are, I couldn't tell you, but I turned around as the point of the sword went straight into my eye, and I fell to the floor, and I was just sort of there, and I was like, I've got now like a moment in my life where I'm going to open my eye, and if I can see, then it's going to be okay, but there is a chance that I can't, and I just remember going, oh, okay, but my eye immediately filled up with blood. I mean, how to how to make an actor feel absolutely awful, and for the rest of his life. I keep on reminding him of it, and it's good now to have it on camera.
Was he your understudy?
No, he wasn't. Otherwise there might have been some more venom in the throw. It might have been more accurate. But I do remember that. I think that was the only time I was injured through the run of it. I mean, given that it is quite a physical part, I think we started off badly, but it was only uphill from there. I mean, or downhill.
That was we used bamboo, painted bamboo sticks. So one was red, one was blue, one was black, and Peter wasn't interested in the fight of the fight. He simply wanted the distillation of these weapons can kill you, and so if the point touched you, Toshi, our musician, would blow into a piece of bone that made the most extraordinary noise. It sounded like a mermaid screaming, and if it touched you, he just wanted you to react to that. So it was incredible. But at one moment, we were fighting, and I had to parry this piece of bamboo and then come in for an attack, really low, like slide in for an attack. And the actor mistook the movement and did the movement from later on in the fight. And he went down with his point of bamboo rather than up. And as I went to parry, he went down and I slid in. And the bamboo, I looked up and the bamboo hit me here.
Oh my goodness.
And it bent and nearly broke on the bone just here. And I often, it's flashed before my eyes, I often thought that if it was 2 centimeters lower, it would have absolutely, because the strength of it hitting me, it cut me, but it would have pierced my eye socket and gone straight into my skull. And that memory of that has made me very careful with fighting ever since.
It's always a problem to me watching the play, and certainly being in it, that Gertrude takes a drink and 2 minutes later is dead. Same with Claudius. Laertes and Hamlet get a scratch and 2 minutes later are dead. It's absolutely unbelievable. But if you formalise the fight, then that would be more allowable.
Then Hamlet takes a bit longer.
Yeah.
Because it's Hamlet.
So did someone pick up Peter O'Toole's Hamlet?
So the National.
Yeah. Well, in any case, I was going to raise that famous O'Toole quote about it being a very lonely part to play. Do you know that he's the lonely-making thing about Hamlet is that you see the fact that every other person in the cast, every man in the audience, knows in his heart that he's a better Hamlet than I am. Which was his flippant way of saying that it was quite a lonely part to play. What was your experience of that, and what's your memories of the company that were around you?
He also said that it was a masturbatory exercise, and anyone who played Hamlet was to be absolutely disregarded.
He said that to you privately, I think.
No, he said it publicly. He said a lot of silly things.
Well, is this a silly thing then? Is it a lonely part?
Well,
Sorry.
in some ways, but get over it. Just get on with it, really. And I was kind of completely in love with myself playing Hamlet.
As were the audience.
And the company. I mean, I had an amazing cast around me, and I was sort of.
You never get to see them.
Well,
It's so tired in Act 4 you have to lie down, and then the rest of the time
you
you're
get
on
to see them on stage.
Yeah, but you're putting a barrier between yourself. You're pushing them away always.
Well, I don't think I felt that. And I certainly didn't. Ebel Petherbridge played the ghost, so he was playing my dad, and he played the grave. No, he didn't play the grave digger. He played the player as well. And Edward, I was so in sort of love with as an actor, and it was such an important part of my whole kind of journey in the play of having him there early in the show was an immense sort of help to me. So surrounded by really, really good people.
Have you retained relationships with the people who played your parents, or?
Yeah, well, he played with Edward Petherbridge, who played my father, and Paul Freeman played Claudius. So I had a really glamorous stepfather, uncle, what is it? Uncle.
Well, both, famously.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Uncle Father.
And Gertrude, very, very glamorous they were.
How old is Claudius?
It's a good question.
I mean,
isn't it?
could Claudius be the same age as Hamlet?
Could be.
Has that been done?
Well, yours presumably was, because it was Johnny Hyde, wasn't it, for you? In the second time you did it.
Oh, but that was all ridiculous because I was the age I was.
You can get those sort of concordances of sort of previous productions, and you can start rehearsals, and if you start checking whether or not an idea that you think you've been fabulous in having, it's always been done before.
Yeah.
Yes, of
but
course.
and I remember saying to Nick, like, every idea we have, it will have been done before, but the collection of ideas will be unique.
Yes, that's
And when ours was, Matthew's text was pretty heavily cut, and Professor Sir Stanley Wells came to say, well, it's nothing that Beerbohm Tree didn't do. So,
What was it like
there is nothing
for
new.
you doing it in terms of the loneliness of it, running a building and doing that play, but also
I was
as
wondering about,
Rory was
rep,
wondering
In rep.
in rep
whether
with
or
As
not
You
you
Like
had
It. What's the
different relationship with your cast, or you
Yeah.
felt a different relationship with your cast when you were doing As You Like It, as you were
I
with the
know-
same people.
I know, I'm sort of listening to all this because it's so unique. It's unique doing it at the Globe anyway, because the Globe is such a precocious character and the audience are definitely the missing beat. And there's a thing, you realise at the Globe you can only rehearse the play, you can't rehearse the production. So I'm sort of listening to this sort of jealous because we could learn the lines and learn the fights. We had the amazing Nadia Nadaraja and Piers Quigley playing Rosencrantz and Guildenstern and then playing Celia and As You Like It. So we were all learning bits of sign language at the same time for both those plays. I think As You Like It is so infused with joy. So we always had that sort of yin and yang balance, and we were such an ensemble. And yeah, I think the loneliness for me was figuring out this building that I'd taken on that was at a particular place in its evolution and what that meant, and some of the pressures on me to play the plays and the space in a certain way. And my baby was 10 months, so every night I go home and breastfeed. So I was never alone. So weirdly, I sort of felt the claustrophobia of it and the accumulative grief of it and the fatigue of it. But for me, the joy and the thrill of it was actually going, because it's the one thing in my life I understood at that point was being on stage, because I didn't know how to be a mum, I didn't know how to be a partner, because we were so unfamiliar to each other. I certainly didn't know how to run, world-class international Shakespeare's Globe. Everything was unfamiliar. So the only thing that was familiar was saying Shakespeare and being totally present with that person. And in a way that the Globe, that thing that often like you were saying, you strive to go, just be present. Last night didn't happen, but only be in the moment. The Globe is only that, because you can have planned to be or not to be, or you can have planned, oh, what a rogue and peasant slave, and then the pigeon will come and stand next to you. And the pigeon is the most important character in the play. And you have to go, well, that's where we are now then, so why are you here? Do you know what I mean? It's like, you never quite know, or the rain's going to come down, and to be or not to be, no one can hear it anyway, so it doesn't matter. Like, it's sort of, it requires such a different presence. So, yeah.
Because my son was born during like 2 months into the run, and people would say, like, how are you doing this? You must be so tired. It was like, I'd be shattered without this.
Totally.
Like, this is my break. This is
100%.
like something to focus on during the day, and also great the sort of the buzz you get, post performance. I'd be able to come home and be like, I'll look after baby until the morning, and then I'll sleep, and you can and be able to sort of pass in between the two of us.
Totally.
It worked really well, and also that shift between it. As someone who's lost their dad when they were little, it being a little bit about my relationship as a son to a father, and it sort of immediately switched from my relation as a father to a son.
Yeah. And also that thing of, because like you said, the thing that I did really badly, sorry, like, are you okay? Because it's called Hamlet. Like, which Hamlet is it? The son or the father, who knows? But it's called Hamlet, and there is this 400-year legacy of like, dun dun dun, play Hamlet. And I just remember so strongly wishing he'd called it Elsinore or something, because it's like, almost the pressure is sort of asymmetrical to what the play is actually about. And I remember in rehearsals really clearly this moment where suddenly, like, Helen Schlesinger, who is just off the charts amazing playing Gertrude, just for whatever reason, just one day in rehearsals went, I'm going to go there today, just to test what going there means. And we were like, okay, like, wow, this is, every character is huge.
And we've just done an NT Live of Hiran's Hamlet. Are there any Hamlets on camera that have affected you the same way that you felt affected in the audience? What's your experience of filming Hamlet?
NT Live was quite still in its infancy-ish when we did it, so it was 2010. And it was due to be on my son's due date. And so my understudy was particularly excited about the rhythms of my partner's body. But I do remember just beforehand, they do a sort of like a VT package. And we were just waiting in the wings, and they did this kind of like 3-minute highlights package of all the previous Hamlets on film, doing various bits of various soliloquies. And I just remember being like, probably shouldn't watch this, but it was sort of in my eyes, like, I've watched it. And then every time I got to those bits of a soliloquy, I'd be like, just heard Gielgud do it, and then get to the next one, like, yes, just heard, but Burton did it better than that. And so that was my experience, of the whole evening.
I suppose having Hamlets on film does preserve that the greats of the past. What's it like watching other people play Hamlet for you who've done it?
There's a moment where I have to lose decision making and lose an interpretation when I'm watching someone do a play that I've done or explored, because there's a lock in your head of choices made that have been repeated again and again and again over 6 months, a year, possibly longer, and it always takes me a moment to click out of that and watch something fresh. But that's probably unique to me. I just have this kind of, okay, hang on, I have to get into it. You know, like the first few pages of a good book.
As someone who hasn't done that yet, did you have to eliminate Hamlets that you remembered whilst you were rehearsing?
No, they kind of, I think, sort of directed me in a part that I wanted, that I took in the end, because I saw lots of clips of people, you guys doing stuff, and things that are on YouTube. And Hamlet, I was telling Ian before, Hamlet started making me reflect a lot about my past, and my childhood has been quite crazy, and I had like moved on from it, thinking that I was okay, and this got me thinking about, all those, I guess, really hard times. And through it all, my mum used to always say, like, if you can laugh about it, when you're in one of those hard times, if you can laugh about it, you're all right. And most of the sort of the bits that I had seen on online were, because the words allow it, it was people sort of exploring the sadness of Hamlet or the grief of it. But then that line about being able to, could I find the laughter within this grief?
The antic disposition.
Yeah. Would that, yeah. So that's the direction I think we just, in the end, sort of went with. Like, how is this too solid flesh? How is this almost a rant to a best friend that can be kind of funny about, which is, it's kind of ridiculous that what's happening.
And that lets us in to what you're doing.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
There's so much humour in it.
Yeah, that's what I was really surprised with. And I'm really looking forward to going back again to the rehearsal room, because so many things are opening up now and so many questions. And to go back into the rehearsal room and to have another go at it is, I think, like a real huge blessing, really.
But the live capture of it, like I think, because we were around the same time at the NT when Nick Heitner started those, like the live or as live, whichever version you do. And there was a definite sense of like, but this is not theatre, is it useful? Like, how do you capture one night when last night was different? And so you're always conscious that when you're watching anyone on film, you go, oh, it's only about, that was that night, that was that moment on that night. But what I probably, like everybody, what you'll find is you suddenly realise when people are emailing and messaging, because there's no way they're going to be able to get in person to see you do what you do, and the gift of being able to see that on film, that's been like one of the most humbling things, is just messages from people that however much you're going, oh, and it wasn't that, and sort of thank God it didn't rain, and thank God the pigeon didn't come down, and thank God the mobile phone didn't go off on that night, all the things that you worry about, it's such a gift for those people that are never going to get to London to see it.
Yeah, my agnosticism about it immediately vanished when literally walking home afterwards, my aunt and uncle phoned from Edinburgh who wouldn't have been able to get to see it in tears of pride, and just that was it. That was why we were doing it. And then obviously the letters you get from people in America who don't get to go and see Shakespeare, but do have a cinema that they're able to go to. You know,
my dad's going to see it. My dad and mum both in Sri Lanka. She's going to be like kind of, which is going to be great. Yeah, you know, the first time my father saw something I did here was when Life of Pi was screened in Sri Lanka, and he had never seen, and he had really no idea what I was doing here, you know.
Wow, and then he saw that.
Yeah, because he would tell his friends, oh, he's working in England.
Amazing.
You know?
You were amazing. That production was fantastic.
It may be unique that there's many Hamlets as there are actors to play. I mean, there's no ideal Hamlet, I don't think, except perhaps in our imagination. So every Hamlet you see brings the personality of the actor.
But also, I think, as someone who's played it a couple of times, I think every Hamlet would change every 6 months that you would start rehearsals. And to be able to get back and re-rehearse it as a completely different person, because we do change regularly. And what is happening outside in the world, how that begins to chime with certain aspects of it. There was a like a Shakespeare committee at Houses of Parliament, and they asked a few of us to do a few speeches to sort of launch this Shakespeare committee, and I'd just been given to be or not to be to do, and we're going to meet in 10 days, whatever it was, and I realised it was the day before the vote on the assisted dying bill, and to have these people who are going to make these significant decisions the next day to say to be or not to be, that is the question. I mean, it was incredible to have that kind of potency in that building, but only because it was that day, you know, another 2 weeks, wouldn't have had that impact, and that elasticity as everyone talks about.
I think it was Peter Brook that said there was a certain point, I don't know if it's true now, but to be or not to be were the most famous 6 words in the world. And it's like, they're easy to remember and they sound nice and there's a like convenient rhythm, but underneath it all is the most profound existential question. And I just like, sort of amazing that actually that's what people are remembering, not because they're nice easy words to like that trip off the tongue, going, what do I want to live? Like, wow, that's
and how
amazing.
simply it's expressed.
Exactly.
And the one Hamlet I saw who absolutely landed on that was a man who was actually dying,
Which was,
Ian Charleson.
Right.
It's my first Hamlet I saw.
Yeah, I think he only did 8 performances, and about 2 weeks after that, died. He knew he was dying, and when that is colouring the story of Hamlet, that makes it unique. And for me, that's Hamlet.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, in terms of...
But nobody else could do it because they could be in that situation.
But also in terms of, he chose to devote the last few weeks of his life to this role.
That's right.
That's its
Against
impact.
the advice of his doctor.
We have his portrait in the is painted into the mural at the back of our set.
That's wonderful. There's another Hamlet production which has been hugely influential, and it was at Elsinore, Laurence Olivier with Vivian Lear's Ophelia. They'd been playing out of doors. It was pouring with rain, and the director said to True and Guthrie, "All right, we'll do it indoors." And in the afternoon, they just arranged the chairs in a big hall, and they improvised the performance. And Guthrie saw it and said, "Of course, that's the way to do Shakespeare, with the audience all the way around." And out of that experience came his Edinburgh Festival productions in the Church of Scotland, whatever it's called there.
Yeah.
Then his tent in Stratford, Ontario, which was then built into the theatre in the Round. Then his own theatre, the Guthrie in Minneapolis. Then Chichester, sort of, but then resoundingly your theatre in Sheffield, the Crucible. And it all happened because it rained one afternoon in Elsinore.
Something quite extraordinary happened one day in Rogue and Peasant Slave when we asked, "Am I a coward?" Somebody in the audience, right in the front row, went yes.
Good.
Quite quietly or loudly?
Just quietly so that I can hear, but also loud enough that everybody sort of else kind of heard too, because there was this holding of breath that happened with all the other people. They were like,
But when you said it, and I heard you say it, you said it as if you were expecting an answer, or the audience was allowed to give you an answer, and also to be or not to be. That's the question. Anyone got the answer?
Yeah.
But that's, I felt so lucky to be able to do it at the Globe, because for me, playing the matinee in the sunshine, it was the easiest time to do Hamlet, in a way that when the sun set and the lights came down, suddenly audiences come with their sort of reverential theatre-going habits and don't say anything and let's sit in the dark. But the matinee, you've got kids opposite each other either side of you, like they're more interested in each other, and to be or not to be becomes a conversation with the audience, because it's not just about your internal, do I want to live? Every matinee with kids in the audience, it would just be like, "Am I a coward? Yes, no, yeah." Like you're sort of, it was sort of wild how they want to be part of it.
Did you so that for me, I had to change the lines because he was the one who was responding. So it was, "Am I a coward? Yes." So it became, "You call me villain," and then he was just nodding his going, "Yes."
Yeah.
And so you would break my pate across, tweak me by the nose, give me the line, the throw is deeper to the wrong. This he was telling it. Then it was, "Swoons, I will take it." And then it went back into like the normal text.
He's going to act at school, go to drama school, and eventually play Hamlet and tell that story back.
Let me finish by asking you, who are the great Hamlets that never were? Like, who would you love to have seen play Hamlet?
Richard Burbage, the first one.
I did my first telly was in Smiley's People with Alec Guinness, and he told me about when he played it in the 40s, modern dress production, and Charles Laughton came to see it, and they had supper afterwards at Guinness's flat, and Charles Laughton asked Alec Guinness if he would mind if he just read some of the speeches, and hearing from Alec Guinness, Charles Laughton was sitting on the floor reading through Hamlet's soliloquies, because he knew that he had never been given the chance to play it and would love to have played it. So it was amazing to hear that from that person, about that person. So I'd like to have seen Charles Laughton play it.
Probably sentimentally, just before he died, my dad was in discussions about doing it by a director who literally off the two lines, "He's fat and scant of breath, and oh that this too solid flesh would melt," thought it should be a large chap. So I asked my dad, and given my dad's natural ability, with comedy, but also pathos, I think he would have been a heartbreaking Hamlet. Yeah. And with Shakespeare as well.
What's the next Hamlet that we want to see? What kind of Hamlet?
I was very taken with Trevor Nunn's production at the Old Vic with the young actor whose name I can't
Ben
Whishaw.
that Rory was in.
Yeah.
The young Rory Kinnear.
Yeah, and I do think there's lots of bonuses if the Hamlet is really young. He's at university, and people in Shakespeare's time went to university when they were 14 or 15. I mean, he could be that age. And the responsibility of his father's challenge that he kills his uncle, if given to a 15-year-old, would be amazing to see, I think.
I think the impetuosity of the betrayal lends itself to a youthfulness rather than someone who's seen a bit more of life and goes, well, yeah, life's crap.
Adrian Booth, the American actor, was still playing Hamlet when he was 71.
Do you fancy that, Hiran? Carry on till you're 71. Adrian, Ian, Hiran, Michelle, Rory, Alex, thank you very much for sharing your memories of Hamlet.